Prime Minister Mark Carney didn't mention President Donald Trump by name in that speech, but his message was clear that nations should band together as the U.S. weaponizes its power and unravels the world order. It came hours after Trump made a new threat to Canada, posting this altered photo of a map showing Greenland and Canada under U.S. control. Rosemary Barton is the CBC's chief political correspondent, and she joins me now in the studio. Rosie, a remarkable speech by the Prime Minister. We've heard bits and pieces of that at various times, but pulled together and delivered on a big stage to a big audience.
I think surprising also in some respect in terms of the timing, why in this moment to that audience, a world audience with other world leaders, he chose to deliver it. And I think how far he went in, yes, not naming the president, but in certainly pointing the finger to the limits, I think, that Prime Minister Carney and his government think need to be marked, the boundaries that need to be set as we see, increasing rhetoric from Donald Trump around other sovereignty. It was a bold speech. It was a clear-eyed view of the world as it stands right now. And to your point, very interesting in terms of where he sees Canada in that place. He talked a lot about middle powers. Here's something else he had to say about where Canada stands in this.
What does it mean for middle powers to live the truth? Well, first, it means naming reality. Stop invoking rules-based international order as though it still functions as advertised. Call it what it is, a system of intensifying great power rivalry where the most powerful pursue their interests using economic integration as coercion.
So essentially saying, to Donald Trump, without saying it to him, tariffs can't get you out of everything, and we're not going to bow down to everything you threaten us with. He also talked about what happens now, right? Because if the rules-based order is gone as we know it, what happens now? He said, well, it partly explains why he's doing some of the things that he's doing, making deals with China, going to Qatar, that this is about building new partnerships with some countries that have similar values, but also countries that see Canada as reliable, and that essentially he wants to put Canada on the stage or at the center of whatever this new order will be that is happening already around us. It was some of the same messages we've heard from the Prime Minister since he became Prime Minister, but I think in this moment to signal it in the way that he did to the President was very important. It
just as a final point, it's sort of a new frame, a new doctrine from the Prime Minister, and sort of this is the justification for all the things I'm doing as I travel around to these countries and try to cut deals on trade and investment.
Yeah, and I will say there has been, and I've sort of scoured social media, there has been remarkably little criticism about the speech, actually, from some conservatives actually giving praise that the Prime Minister finally has his elbows back up, if you will. But there's been not a lot of criticism about the position he took. Do we know now what's going to happen with Donald Trump? Do we know whether he's going to respond or react to these comments in any direct way and put Canada at the center of them? It's possible. But I think we're at the point where the Prime Minister has said we can't accept these things, and we're not going to let ourselves be steamrolled by the President, regardless of what he comes up with next.
Okay, Rosie, that's the CBC's chief political correspondent, Rosemary Barton. Thanks so much. Well, the U.S. President, Donald Trump, will join other world leaders in Davos tomorrow, and it could bring some tense moments as Trump threatens to tariff a number of European nations that oppose his plan to seize Greenland. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is already in Davos, and he's warning the European Union not to retaliate.
Sit back, take a deep breath, do not retaliate, do not retaliate. The president will be here tomorrow, and he will get his message across. I believe he is going to have meetings, and again, also have an open mind that, why this rapid response in terms of, this is a no.
Peter Boehm is a Canadian senator and a former G7 Sherpa as the top officials. Those summits are known. And Louise Blais is the former Canadian deputy permanent representative to the United Nations. It's good to see you both on a big foreign policy day, it would seem. Senator Boehm, I just want to start, I've seen a lot of speeches by a lot of prime ministers. This one is notable, it seems. This one stands out. How do you assess what Mark Carney did today?
I think it's the most consequential speech by a Canadian prime minister since Louis Saint Laurent in 1947 at the University of Toronto, where he set out the parameters of the rules-based international order as it then was with the founding of the United Nations. And it's like Prime Minister Carney's speech today is in fact a bookend to that, saying, okay, it's been almost 80 years, we're going to have to think differently now. And he provided all of the rationale for it.
Louise Blais, how do you see it? Do you have this alpha and omega frame as Senator Boehm does? How do you view the speech today?
Well, I think no, exactly. It was extremely consequential. Now we'll have to wait and see which consequences. I think, I was a little bit, it's putting Canada at the center as a leader of this pact of countries, middle power. And it's a choice that the Prime Minister has made. Is it the right choice? And we'll have to wait and see. We are the most exposed to the United States. So you can say on one hand it was the right thing to do. We know what we're talking about. But on the other hand, we are the most exposed. So did he need to go quite that far? Could it have cut 25% of the rhetoric and still gotten his message across? Do we need to put everything in speeches all the time, or do we need to act quietly and effectively? That's the question I ask myself still.
But, Senator Boehm, I wonder, there's a bunch of things happening at the same time in this speech, right? There's managing the very complicated bilateral relationship with the United States, but this call to action with middle powers. How do you think that they will respond to this? Because clearly Canada is on the front line of the changing United States. But, Sweden, France, the UK, Belgium. How do you think the other countries that they're speaking to will react?
I think there's probably a lot of receptivity to this, and it's not the first time that we've seen the rules-based international order threatened in this way, or the concept. I think he's quite right in saying that we don't have to keep bleating about it. We have to look now at what is really going to be happening in the world. And we had a bit of a foretaste of this in Charlevoix in 2018, where the sticking point on the G7 communique, in fact, was the reference to the rules-based international order. That was the first Trump administration. They didn't want to sign on. They eventually did. But that was an indicator that there were troubled waters ahead.
Well, yeah, sorry, because you and I first met in Sicily at Donald Trump's first G7 in Italy, and then at successive ones. Well, I can imagine, but just the U.S. it's remarkably different even from them. When he was still the biggest disruptor in the room, it's leveled up to a whole different place.
There are no guardrails. He does not have advisors that really know the business in depth. They're there primarily because they are acolytes. So the professionals aren't there anymore. And this would be the advice he would be getting, probably something a bit more measured than we are now. And that's why I say the waters are very troubled.
So, Louise Blais, this call from the Prime Minister for the middle powers must accept they may have to go it alone a bit more, may have to forge new alliances to sort of build resilience and economic strength so you can resist the pressure from the great powers. How daunting is that to recalibrate and reorder, to build these new alliances in the face of an unreliable U.S. and China still out there?
Yeah, well, 2 points to that. Obviously, it's extremely daunting, and it will take time. And time is not on our side. And we have to really review USMCA this year. We are the country that had the best access to the U.S. market up until now. Are we really willing to throw that away for something that may come to be after years and years and years, 10 years of work? I mean, the U.S. is our #1 customer by a long shot. And I think this change is not going to happen overnight. And what I heard today is just this sense that we're changing right away. Well, I think we have time. We have to give time its ability to do work. If we want to diversify, it will not happen tomorrow. And so in the meantime, we will continue to rely on the American market. And so I'm just not sure where we should be sacrificing that, but we should be preparing. I think the Prime Minister is right. We are not in the old world. We have to look ahead, but we also have to do it in a pragmatic way. And I'm not sure that we have gotten that calibration quite just right. And I'll just end by saying, look, I've received so many calls today from Americans who are saying, way to go, and we need this. And I tell them, I said, yes, well, I agree, but you have to do the work too from inside the United States. And in that sense, I think the speech by Mark Carney, I hope reverberates with Republicans in Congress so that they know that even if Canada is willing to do this, there is trouble, and they need to stand up because only they can really change things in the short term.
But you know, Louise, just to follow up on that point you made, how do you calibrate this with the United States? Because I get the importance of the access to the market, and I get the importance of NAFTA, but you know, in the 1 year to the day, the threat landscape has expanded to the point now that we don't know what this guy's going to do about Greenland and whether NATO will survive this presidency, to the point that allies are being asked to send NATO troops to NATO territory to defend NATO land from a NATO member. So how do you calibrate a trade priority when just the threat landscape is so much bigger than it was even 10 months ago?
Well, more than a week ago even.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. And I don't want to sound dissident with this importance of USMCA, but if you look to business, I mean, these are jobs. This is our prosperity that's at stake. And while we have to stand up for our sovereignty at the same time, I think that we can do both. And I think the threat is real. It's very unsettling to see the post that the president made last night in the middle of the night with Canada becoming the United States. I think that we are vulnerable, and so there's no doubt about it. I'm clear-eyed about that. But we're going to have to do more than speeches moving forward to get ourselves at this bind. And I think there are still reasonable voices in the United States. We have to work for time, work all angles of this, try to get the best possible review of USMCA we possibly can. And you know, we have to hope for the best and prepare for the worst.
Peter Boehm, your thoughts on that?
I agree with Louise, but I think if you look at our history, our commitment to multilateralism, to some sort of a world order, has always been that very important counterweight to our overwhelming bilateral relationship with the United States. And it's a difficult line to walk. I think Louise is right in terms of concerns about CUSMA as we move forward. But think about the audience there in Davos. It's not just politicians. It's investors, it's business, it's influencers. And the question and answer period afterwards brought that out as well in terms of right after the Prime Minister's speech. So I think we have to look at this in a little bit from the long arc of Canadian foreign policy and the work that has been done over the years in terms of various initiatives, whether it's through the United Nations or regional organizations or some of our big initiatives on human rights, on gender equality, and on other issues.
It was suggested to me, Senator, that the message there, not just speaking about the state of things as they are, to paraphrase the Prime Minister, but that audience hearing from Mark Carney, we're open for business, we believe in this, we believe in partnership. There is a marketing component there in terms of attracting jobs and investment.
Absolutely, I would agree with that. And I think as we move on, we're into the season now. There's the Munich Security Conference coming up in a few weeks' time. There will be more discussion then, and who knows, as the three of us have been saying, 1 week, 1 day, things can change very, very quickly in terms of where we stand in NATO, the entire issue of Greenland, and indeed moving forward on other areas.
I'm curious to see if J.D. Vance gives another speech there, because that's where a lot of the disruption with Europe happened.
I was there last year, and it was not a lot of fun.
Yeah, so look, a quick 30 seconds from each of you if I can, and I know it's unfair because of the complexity of the topic, but Louise Blais, increasingly there are imperfect options out there for Canada. China is one of those. What are your thoughts on sort of the guardrails the Prime Minister says are in place on this engagement with China in terms of the need to find the other big giant market on the planet as a hedge against the U.S.?
Yeah, well, no, I think that we cannot ignore the Chinese market. I think it was right for the Prime Minister to settle that relationship. I think that he did it in a reasonable fashion, and I think obviously moving forward, we're going to have to keep in mind where the Americans are going to go. So far, they seem okay with things, but I don't think we can say that we're aligned with China on security issues. And then the Prime Minister, when he made those comments about alignment with China, I think the choice of words could have probably been a little bit better. But overall, I think he is looking for a balance, and it's not always going to be perfect how he gets to it.
Senator, what are your thoughts on that? Just engaging with China, is this maybe a sign that maybe they think CUSMA could be in real jeopardy of being dead?
I think it's a case of keeping everything in balance in terms of our national interests. We're a big country. We have different national interests, and we know that One premier, in particular, Premier Ford, has had some concerns on the electric vehicles issue as well. But my big takeaway from this speech, and I would see it almost as an axiom, is the reference, and I'll quote it, "the performance of sovereignty while accepting subordination." This is a real case of telling it like it is, and that's a message I think that will resonate for some time to those not only who were there, but across our country.
We always appreciate your insight on the big days. Louise Blais, Peter Boehm, thank you so much for coming in. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Pleasure, David. Thank you.